Blessings, beautiful souls. I am so excited about our guest. We have Helena Riley, and Helena has drawn the DMT avatar and DMT code of the 11. And the 11 holds a state of consciousness outside of the matrix, outside of our programming. You could see it as that Christ consciousness. And the avatar that it's holding is the mastermind. So if you are looking to connect in, and I love this, could not have been a more perfect code because of the work that you're doing. So before I just go off on a rampage, I'm going to turn it over to you and just let you kind of talk about how this code of the mastermind, which you so much are, and the work that you're doing is also spreading that frequency. I'm going to let you take over from there.
Okay, that's a beautiful, and it's so interesting. I almost wore a golden dress. So I was matching or black. And then I thought, let's do some light. Let's do green. So my journey into this work, I mean, first of all, I always say no, I was born this way. So I was born, what you see is how it seems as though I came out of the womb in this way, asking questions and diving deeply into things. So I was born as the miracle child. So my mother had had 5 miscarriages, partial hysterectomy, tubular pregnancy, adopted 3 children, and papers in for the 4th when I was conceived. So she was referred to a psychiatrist. Even I know his name in Boston, well, we were from Massachusetts. So they thought it was a hysterical pregnancy. So that's, and then at the birth, it was a cesarean section because they thought I was seriously deformed or something might be wrong. All of the OBGYN doctors were in that room in the Mass General Hospital at my organized cesarean at 9:11 in the morning. I emerged on March 6th. Yes. Now, the story goes that they all got down on the floor and prayed, and the incubator was right there because it was, I'm up there. So it was pre-ultrasound days. So in many ways, they've now taught me that my mother actually risked her life to bring me in because nobody knew, no one really knew what I would emerge as. So it was kind of a weird way to be born. And then they called me the miracle child. So, but what I was experiencing, because I really have never gotten over the birthday, was this heaviness on earth when I was born. And I think my first thought was, oops, I think I made a mistake. Can I still go back? So there's the mastermind right there. She probably wanted to return. So I never really celebrate birthdays.
Mhm.
So I could see that my parents were carrying a heavy burden. So although we lived in a manor house in Newton, Massachusetts with 9 bathrooms, I could see that their stress was consuming. My grandfather had invented the plastic eyeglass frames. My father was running the manufacturing with a few hundred employees. And the stress he was under a war when I was born. So I think it set it up. The trajectory of what I was here to solve was set up right there. Because I saw these people have everything, but they're so freaked out. They're so stressed out, sort of like what Joe Dispenza said, they're living 70% in the hormones of stress. So I started right then to do readings. My first reading was to tell them that they were rich now, but someday they'd be poor and many people would live in the rooms of their home. So I still can see for some reason, the look on my mother's face. I have no idea why I can still see that. So the point is that I was born with the gift of prophecy. And this did not make my life easier. It actually challenged me. And I think that's probably why the Master card came up, because I had to learn how to communicate in a world that no one really understood what I was seeing,
Mhm.
feeling, touching, and knowing. many ways, I developed at the University of Chicago and got advanced degrees and also studied, at some other high prestige universities. So I knew what crazy was because I could tell that the disconnect, that the reality I was experiencing was not what they were experiencing. So I had to learn what crazy looked like to humans, and I did. So I knew never to tell them if there was an angel in the room, for example. So that is what set me up for this journey, is that I started to seek. So I went to the best universities and I studied psychology, but I saw the limit of it, that talking did not change the pattern, but made people more comfortable with it in a sense. So then I jumped on planes and went to the Far East and studied with Leonard Orr, and actually did groups with him throughout the world, and lived in the ashram of Harakan Babaji, and also Leonard Orr's ashram in Northern California. Actually, it was more like a hot springs place. So, and Gurmai and Muktananda, Sri Kaleshwar, and Saima. I've worked in all of those ashrams as a therapist. So that's where I saw that this disconnect was deeper, that even though they were presenting themselves spiritually and having darshan, doing seva, living in an ashram in India, they still had the same core wounds. And I was getting to see that behind the curtain. So that's when Gurmai at the end told, and I was seeing high-end people, because some of them were just flying in for darshan. And so she told me, that my mission was in sound and tone, and to go back into the world. Because I was married, I had my son was about 3 at the time, Michael. And we'd been having darshan for 2 years with her. So in many ways, and I was the diagnostician in the ashram. So I wrote these extensive, like I would do a past life reading, and it would be 10 pages. Gurmai said, this life, another life, father or mother. That's all she wanted to know. And then she assigned myself or the psychiatrist. So that's how this work was formulated, is I had to calibrate my own cellular and field structure with the other humans and feel comfortable with it. And this is why this work has become essential to adapt to the new frequencies on Earth. So when I joined Robert Lloy, I was actually, his first version of the work had kind of caved in because the Amiga company went out of business. The Amiga was pre-Apple. And they went out of business, so we had to redo the entire platform. But what happened was we built these technologies and the library of frequencies for this time we're in now. So the support that I was needing, that I figured out I needed as a child and evolving, is encompassed in what these scalar technologies actually create, which is an envelope for people to evolve in. So the other day, I'm in my home in Florida, and the other day, I remembered that when I first started going to school, I would go to my mother and say, could you give me a bubble? Because I felt so alone
Mhm.
that and to play and socialize and live the world, but I would feel that the energy from people, and it didn't make me feel very good. So I would ask, is that okay? Yeah, we've had the solar flares, and now you're muted. And the solar flares have been creating. Okay, so yes, the solar flares are creating a lot of disruption in the internet right now. So
Well, we got to just experience that live on our interview.
yes, it's perfect timing, actually, because it was right when I actually created this bridge, because I had forgotten that I used to literally go to my mother before I would go to school and say, I'm sure she used to say, "You're so deep." But I was probably telling her, like this little kid, could you like give me some protection so I can go out and play with my friends, but not feel crappy afterwards? So I was already experiencing the transference. And I think it's relevant because the mastermind card came up. So in a sense, I was creating the mastermind as a child. I was coaching my parents. And indeed, Muktananda's ashram did show up, and he did put many people in each room, and it showed up when I was about 20, a number of years later. So, and it was very close to where our English tutor house was. And he also bought an English tutor house, and it was like Chestnut Hill, so it was like 2 or 3 miles from my house in Newton. And so there's a continuum. And as I look at it now, the other aspect of my teaching was that as a child, every night I would get up and watch on the screen the Mickey Mouse show where I would get teachings. And I thought it's like YouTube, but it didn't exist. So in the continuum and teachings like wiping away the thoughts in your brain before you go to sleep, those are the kinds of teachings. So this has been, and I think many of us are this way, the sensitives, it's been a continuum where the environments have been feeding us both the situations we need to rise above and also recalibrate, and also the way that we fit into that, because we're here to design the energy field of the new earth. As far as I can see, that's the only reason I'm here right now, is to assist in the design of the quantum field and teach people how to connect. It's a long answer.
Oh my gosh, but it was so perfect. I actually learned a lot about you. I think this is maybe the third or fourth time I've interviewed you. And this is the first time I've heard this story. And I just so enjoyed hearing more about you. You've had such a fascinating and amazing life. So from there, let's talk a little bit about the things that you're bringing through and the work that I know that you and your late husband Robert have brought through to support holding a higher frequency in the body and connecting to that consciously. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so one of the main takeaways that I've developed is that the reason why people complain about different modalities not having the results, not getting the results is really simple. We are entrained. We go into a hypnotic state in the third trimester, and we record the nuances of the emotions, the thought forms, the environment, the impressions. It's roughly 61,320 hours. And then we go off to a weekend with someone, and we think we're going to magically transform those 61,000 hours. And there's a mathematical, the equation isn't quite right. So Robert and I, when I first met up with him, I was looking for something that decoded the subconscious. Because I had seen, especially working under Guru Mai, because she was such a nurturing guru, which many are not. She was, like she would think about the food as important and the nurturing of her students. So what happened was we evolved. So I'd come in from India 2 years with my family in Honolulu, and then I ended up searching for this modality. So I eventually met up with, actually, I actually it was several people before I met Robert. I was sent by Don Campbell to the University of Honolulu, and that's when I met Robert's technology. Now, what has happened is that over time, um, and he was a great master, but he was very focused on this narrow area. So what he was doing was developing a library of frequencies. He has the formula for the scalar technology, and he brings that to multiple civilizations, actually. And he's brought it to Earth several times. Usually Earth is very resistant to advanced technology. but they don't entrain that easily. But in this time, yes. So we decided, after we'd known each other for 10 years, we decided to join forces. Actually, we were actually married by Sri Kaleshwar in India. So this is when we realized that it needed to be immersive,
Mhm.
that in order to decode, recode, reset the subconscious, what we've been programmed into for thousands of years, maybe millions of years, is so powerfully embedded, and it is survival. We've been trained to survive. So the technology, we eventually developed this technology that runs 24/7. And the key there is that we mastered the heat, and it plays into the environment. And my vision now, since the pandemic, is 10 million quantum harmony homes streaming energy into, because I'm actually concerned about the children.
Mm.
And I know that many coming in, especially now, are here to bring in the new solutions, and we don't want to shut them down. So the massaging of frequencies 24/7, we can actually counteract the matrix. And it's very unobtrusive.
Mm.
So therein lies the key, is that when you can evolve a beautiful field that feels good, you don't want to live without it. So it's a positive addiction in a sense. It's a positive entrainment is a better word. So
Right.
what's happening, since the brain is actually an antenna looking for information to activate, and the story with my son, who was roughly 3 years old when we left India. So he's been part of this whole mission,
Mm.
and he actually developed some blocks in performing on like some of these standardized tests like the GMAT test. So over time, Robert and I developed soundtracks for specific purposes. So for example, the Focus soundtrack got Michael, my son, from a 500 to a 740 in his GMAT, which I don't really, I'm not a big fan of those tests.
I don't
They
even know what is that something that the kind of test they do in like grade school and
graduate school.
yeah.
The GMAT is the test you have to take to go to like business school.
Okay.
And the fancy business schools, the top business schools, you have to get beyond a 700,
Okay.
which, yeah, it's the like top 1%, right? And people have a lot of anxiety about those tests. So, you could walk in and freeze. I know I did when I took the SAT.
Yeah, that's the one I know is the SAT. And there's one other one too that's
The ACT,
yes.
the GMAT, and then the LSAT, and then the MCAT. So it's for each. So the MCAT's for medical, the LSATs, and
Mhm.
all these tests they're measuring your ability to memorize and perform rote. It's not higher level functions. But it's because the frontal lobe is 40% of the brain. We're being conditioned by our culture and society to always be in fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
Mhm.
And especially the year that we're heading into, the next 2 years, actually, the triggers, like right now, the internet went down for 1 second, and that was related to the solar flare. But the triggers are going to need to be decoded, because it's going to come closer and closer. So the recovery time has to be faster. And these are why these technologies become a necessity. And when we started the work, they were very much a luxury, really. In other words, and now it's a necessity, because you have to have something to center you and to ground you at the same time that you're reaching for ascension. So that's a high state of balance and discrimination. And, as I look at the trajectory of my life, I realize that I've been kind of walking the tightrope, because I was wired differently and I seem to know it instantly. When I was born in that hospital room, whoever was in that body, she looked around and went, I'm going to have to do a lot of work. This is going to be heavy work. And it has been. It's lightening up, but it's been some heavy lifting, and that's what the technology is for. So when I arrived in Florida, there was a technology, the miracle technology was here, but it had a player that was about 5 years old that kept on going on and off. And I noticed I was waking up and I was like, I'm working harder. And it took me a while to connect the dots, right? I was like, I'm having to work really hard to like keep my neighbor's energy, because I'm aware of what everybody's going through. And it was so interesting. So then they shipped me some new players, and ever since, yeah, so your field of energy with 5G has become aggressive. It's aggressively imprinting and can deliver frequencies. So it's actually, some people, it's putting you into fight, flight, freeze. There are headaches, rashes. People respond differently, but it's high radiation. And
Mm.
we're adapting right now. So we need to be very mindful of some of the frequencies that might be creeping into the environment, because even if we're super mindful, our neighbor might be going into a panic attack, for
Mm.
example, because some frequency reached her and she doesn't have the knowledge
Mhm.
that we have. So it's, so we're on a journey right now. And we need to understand that we're moving into the quantum realm, which is frequency. There's no separation, so we're very entangled. And we need to be aware of that as humans so that we can remain in a state of joy, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just putting myself in what my personal experience is and just frequency and that sort of thing. And so what I've been working on is actually raising the frequency of my physical body
Mhm.
so that it's higher than the frequency of my environment, let's say. And what
Ah,
I'm
smart.
finding is that I don't get interference that of picking up on those sort of things anymore because my actual physical body is at a higher frequency. And so what used to
Mm.
short me out or bother me isn't bothering me anymore.
That is the key. The key is to be able to manage your frequency in a way where you might even notice it, or even you might feel a little bit of it, but not, it doesn't take you over. It doesn't trigger you. It's just you're aware. Let's say your neighbor's angry at the dog. You're aware of it. It doesn't affect you though. And that is where we're going.
Yeah.
So that's an attainment. I do feel as though when I was living directly with Robert and he was well, I was in that state. It's interesting how the grieving, and it's important because I didn't know that I've had the depth of this experience of love with someone at this level, like this merging of not only energy fields, but mission. So we actually created something that will endure for hundreds of years beyond, our coupling. So I don't know that I've ever had that experience on Earth, but I will say that in a way, I'm kind of grateful to go through the grieving because it's such an important part of the human experience. And I don't know that I had experienced it at this depth. He was really integrated. And there's one other thing that's so key, which is that in 2022, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded in quantum entanglement to three dudes, Anton Zellinger, John Clauser, and I don't remember the third name, but that was a big shift because this is no longer woo-woo science,
Mm.
but it is affecting Earth because this is what I've realized, because quantum is empty space. It's fluid. There's really no stability. Newtonian is physical, it's solid, it's third dimensional. So the emotional instability that we're seeing in the children and the adults, even in the pets, it makes a lot of sense when you understand that we actually shifted paradigms for real. when that award was given, and that was September of 2022. So it's so interesting also that Robert had worked on this project for over 40 years. After that was awarded, and he was a real pioneer, he passed within months. So it was, the paradigm shifted, the
I got
technology
chills
is on
again.
the
Every time you
stage.
bring him up, I get chills. He's just hanging out. It's so fun.
He
I mean,
was,
he is amazing, and he's definitely still here because he's coming in hot during this time, and I just think it's so beautiful. Okay, so I want to go in. That is such a, I didn't realize that that was true, and I think it's so huge. And now I'm going to sit in that and kind of read the energetic pattern behind it, because that's a big deal what you just said. And okay, so where do I want to go? I keep going to what we were talking about before. And okay, how do I want to do this? Well, the one thing that keeps us, we were talking a little bit about trauma bonding and just the whole, how much we focus on our emotional state of being. I mean, that is so, it's like, we want to create emotion. We don't want to feel an emotion. It's this, it's that. It's like, oh my gosh, can we stop leaping and all of this? And I know that as we ascend, we will become something different. And that emotional primal behavior, everything that you're talking about, we're going to ascend past it and we're going to become something different. But as we're moving and we are ascending and we're having this, what we call the human experience, which I believe is definitely ascending. And I think even through my own experience, I've definitely ascended past what most people would call a human experience. And I own it, right? Because
yes.
I don't consider myself, I'm not here to have a human experience. And I know that I'm here to ascend the human experience. And that's my focus. But to be able to do that, we have to be in a space where we're willing to let go of those trauma bonds and just identifying in all of that in order to move past it, right? Because we're so identified that our emotions and all of these things are real. And I'm not saying that they're not, but in a way they're not.
In a way, they're not, actually. They're transitory, fleeting states. So
Yeah.
they're not, they're really not real. They're fleeting. So that you can't really hold on to them. And I just heard for you actually that you are here to teach the mechanics of ascension. That's the word that they use for very specifically, the mechanics, because there's a scientific process to this. For some reason, they're saying to me, I'm here to embody that because I have the scalar technology to teach. So I don't, so the mechanics are different, but we're both here to teach the mechanics of ascension. We're using and we're developing tools. That's interesting. We've got a joint mission because we're developing the tools that do the heavy lifting.
I love
And yes.
it. And that's so fun
Now,
that you said the mechanics, because that's actually what I'm working on is cell ascension. It's the actual ascension
ah,
of the physical body. And like what we were saying before is but I never saw it in that way. So thank you for bringing that through. Okay, I'm gonna let you go again.
so that's one of the things. So I was born this way. That's just the way I am. That, I hear something and I'm going to say it. Um, And I guess some people think it's okay and some people really don't like it. I say this because I think many are in this situation now, that as we dive into our truth, and that's what scalar technology or quantum energy is all about, the truth. You cannot hold up the mask anymore. I don't have all my props, but I usually have all these masks and things. You can't do that in the quantum field because it's kind of like the way water bonds are. We dissolve the bonds and then we rejoin, and it's constant. So your trauma bonds, in many ways, what's happened, and it's so interesting that so many areas of our country were frozen. The trauma bonds seem to get frozen.
Mm.
because people get attached to the story. Carolyn Mace talked about that a lot. We get addicted to the trauma, and it keeps you stuck for possibly hundreds of lifetimes, I want to say. So you can even marry the same person 100 times if you want to, and even have the same pattern. And you'll fit together like a glove. You'll come together and then just start playing out the pattern. It will feel very comfortable and familiar until it doesn't.
Blows my mind.
But and then you realize this is your.
Mhm. Let's see. Oh, okay.
Yes, and so we're still being, I just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the solar, so we lost sort of, it
Just
wobbled.
just a little bit. Yeah, it happened just a
Okay,
little bit. I think we're good though. I think we're
I
good.
think we are too.
Okay, so I know we're going to do a process here in a little bit. I think I love this topic that we're on just because it's so important. I mean, honestly, this is going to be this is human evolution, is to let go of identifying in those wounds and the trauma, and then it's like, okay, well, then what, right? And we actually have to focus on what we're becoming.
Then what? And that's the big thing. I'm glad you brought that up, Jules, because I noticed, so I discarded one of my, one of the trainings I received in one of the lifetimes, right? You feel a lightness, but you also feel an emptiness.
Mhm.
And I've heard this from so many people in our audience, but sometimes you feel like reaching back and putting it back in because you kind of feel ungrounded, or that's your familiar way of being. So there's some caution that, and I know a lot of the psychologists talk about how people return to the narcissistic relationship usually 7 times, and it is because it feels expanded. But when people feel that, sometimes they feel empty instead of free and happy. They
Mhm.
feel like something's missing. I've got to fill this gap, especially in America, so you go buy a new car or something. And right? You go to I don't know, to the bar.
Oh gosh,
But
no one's going to the bar after that.
not tonight anyway. But yeah, so it's really important to learn the trust of yourself, the process that we're going through right now. That it's almost as though if you look at it, that like your guides are designing this for you to walk through, so that this is interesting, this is just coming in, so that you can walk through this like in a very graceful way. And I'm noticing how much synchronicity is starting to occur. Like I'll get a message, go do this, and then suddenly that person I needed to speak with. So it's also this alignment, because we are actually now learning to align with the quantum field. But now that's very disconcerting, because we had this belief everything was solid, which is stable, which is why I think we need to help the children, because I do feel the parents are going to feel the wobble more and more, and it will turn into fear. This year, I think we're going to have some challenge.
Yeah, I understand that. It's I really feel like just the takeaway is be comfortable in the uncomfortable and be willing to let go of identity. And because identity is the one thing that keeps us looping, and even identifying in what we consider form, right? Because
Yes.
matter is only 10% of our experience. The other 90% is the quantum, but we're so focused on only paying attention to the 10%. And that is starting to change. And people are really starting to realize that this other 90% is just as real, if not more real, because it's
Yes.
higher frequency and it feels more home than matter. And so I'm excited because I know you have these technologies that are really supporting people in what I love about what you do is that you're bringing a frequency into the room, into the body, into the experience of the brain wave, and people are just organically in that frequency, and they don't even necessarily have to fully understand what's happening on a conscious level, because eventually they understand. It just happens, kind of like you. It's like, oh, I just got that information, or oh, this is just, it just happens. And it is that grace you were talking about.
Yes, and it is the alignment because when we practice alignment, there's a state of bliss.
Mm.
When you connect to source, it's blissful. So you're not going to leave that. You're going to keep. So, people talk about meditation being difficult. No, meditation is managing your brain waves
Yes.
and your state. And there's nothing difficult about meditation. It's just your thought about it that you're supposed to just sit there for hours or something. It's it's more just notice what your brain's doing. And even in the story of my son Michael, that when it was some form of test taking anxiety or unworthiness that, got so high that with the entrainment with the frontal lobe and the focus frequencies, he calmed down. So the knowledge he'd attained came out on the test. And that's the same with all of us. In some ways, life is this drama that we're walking through or a test, and we're going to be thrown different experiences. But how we flow into them is all about our evolution at this time. Because if you resist, you're going to have a very bumpy ride. You're going to, it's going to, and I think what you're doing, Jewel, is really beautiful because you're modeling and you're embodying this energy in such a beautiful feminine way that it is the embodiment that this is possible. And it's not about the ego or about, demanding to have power. It's about finding it inside. And that is the true power. Ascension is the true power. Because all this goes, this is a projection of our mind. This is the screen, the hologram of our creation. So it's
Oh,
interesting. We built this house. So we actually put structured water into the paint, into the floors, into the walls. So in many ways, we're building our field, the subtle energy field. And that consciousness that we can do that as humans, and then we can send our subtle energy field out ahead of us even. So let's say you're going to speak at an event. We'll send the subtle energy field out first so we feel it, and then we prepare ourselves. And this is the new way of being, is to realize we're in a field. As we do this, however, humanity's going to have to do a lot of research on some of the damage that we've done to the field. So, it's toxic. The field is quite toxic. They've designed it that way unconsciously. But that will be the next stage, which is why quantum harmony homes, those children coming in after the year 2000, will have all the solutions. We just
mm,
have to not shut them down, just keep them awakened.
I love this. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like let's do the process now.
Okay, let's go. Very good. So we developed a soundtrack for gamma activation. And I'm going to be sharing this a little. So this is a good time for you to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. And as we do this together, we're going to play some frequencies. I'd like you to put your right hand on your heart, your left hand on the womb chakra. And I'm going to play these frequencies. As we do, we're going to bring the white light. These are gamma brainwave frequencies. And I'm going to bring this up to the corpus callosum, which connects the right and left hemisphere of the brain. And we're going to fill that with white light, and then we're going to connect to the quantum field.
Lena, I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing.
Uh-oh. Okay, hold on. Could you tell me that? Okay, I do know why, actually.
Okay,
I have to go back. Hold on. Yeah, you might want to, I don't know if you should pause the recording for
okay, let me
some
pause.
reason.
Everyone hang tight.
Yeah, for some. So taking a few deep breaths. Oops. Few deep breaths. Allow the oxygen to flow through your body. Place your left hand on your womb, your right hand on your heart chakra. And as the energy ascends, visualize the corpus callosum, which is what connects right and left hemispheres, filling with white light and gamma brainwaves. And let's go.
That was so good. Ah, I feel like I just got a frequency massage.
Yes, yes, and you look beautiful. So thank
Oh,
you for
thank you.
receiving.
That was so amazing. I hope everybody could. Do you want to stop your sharing and we'll let you come big again? That was so beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing that. And just to let everybody know, there's two gifts on the show page so that you can listen to this one. And then she has another one. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the other one is for?
Yes, so one is for alignment because the key will be our alignment with the quantum field and with our own soul. Actually, maybe easier to say our own soul. So you want to be aligned. And then the second one is the gamma bliss activation. So that is your state of genius creation, which I know the summit's about, your superpower. So when you listen to that, Notice if you start receiving inspirations, energy, and feel free to download it onto your phone and listen to it through a headset. Before you start work, notice if it's activating your awareness to create, because all are being called to create and heal Earth now. So let's let the party begin.
Oh my goodness. Yes, let's let the party begin. What a beautiful gift. And I just want to thank you for that. And I hope everybody could feel the power in that. And I know you can because it's that powerful. What you're doing is so amazing. Thank you for bringing your genius because you were such a big part of this creation. And I want to honor you in that and your continued work because it's so important, and I just love you. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you. I feel I've found a real soul sister. So let's create something new together, Jewel.
Oh, I'd love to.
Something, Jewel, something extraordinary
Yeah,
for the empowered beings on the planet that are awakening. Let's do that.
I'm in. I'm in.
Okay, good.
I'll stay tuned for that for sure. Let's do
Something.
a shout out to your website and or wherever you want to bring people so that they can learn more about you or work with you.
Okay, quantumsoundtherapy.com is our website. And there are many free gifts and many things to explore. So we have voice analysis and many things to explore, but quantumsoundtherapy.com is where the work is. Also, Helena360.com if you want to reach out. So yes, we are we are here working away.
And doing fabulous work at that. So I'll put those in the show notes as well. So if you're driving, just know you can go and click on those and go and connect with Helena. She is so beautiful and so amazing. And
Oh,
thank you, honey, for coming and bringing your brilliance. And thank you, everyone, for listening and being a part of this. Because when we come together and we witness what is possible, is when we really start to step into our superhuman experience. And that's what I want to invite all of you to experience after being activated with these beautiful frequencies.
I love that. Thank you for having us. We are grateful. It's our honor indeed.
All right, everyone. Well, sending you so much love and a big hug until we meet again.
Thank you, honey.